Material Differences. Chapter 16, Part 2. Neon Reunion. Soon he crossed the street to take a look at this infamous Tinder alley firsthand. Sure enough, the sides of the street were home to plenty of people he wouldn't be shocked to discover were escorts. The majority were human, but he saw several Japasi, and of course those demon bunny Davari. But just as he thought he'd lost all ability to be surprised by human sexuality, he was reminded that all that meant was he wasn't imaginative enough. Because he spotted a Ravex, female, wearing a giant pink feather boa around her neck and a dress that was otherwise rather conservative. Just as he was wondering who would possibly hire her, he watched a man walk up to her, and he must have said the magic words, because the Ravex just plucked him off the ground like a child, cradling him in her arms as she carried him off down the street. Jaeger took a moment to chuckle as he scanned the street a little longer. He spotted the cop then roughly in the middle of the stretch. He was in power stilts so he could see over the crowds. It was similar to a powered exosuit but for light police duty with a focus on speed and vision. He could see why it would be useful here. Jaeger's real issue was figuring out how to walk down the street without ruffling too many feathers. Like the kid earlier, he was worried a series of rejections might anger the locals. He could already see a few at the edges eyeing him. He was dressed simply but well, and around here that likely indicated he had scrip, especially his boots. Good boots were worth their weight in gold these days. There was a particular woman he spotted at the edge, eyeing him very carefully, but he frowned a moment as he saw her. She didn't look right. Her clothes were too nice. Not that the others were dressed poorly, but it was the difference between people who wore clothes that were both comfortable to work in and worn to show off, as opposed to her, looking like someone who was wearing what she thought an escort would wear. Her shoes as well. He couldn't imagine anyone walking up and down a street for hours on end in shoes like that. She was pretty enough, he supposed, as far as regular women went. Nothing special. Though she was a redhead, and he knew they could be more sought after for their rarity. When she started to walk towards him, he could see the surprised look on the other girls' faces. She wasn't following the same rules as the others, and he couldn't make out what they were saying, but it sounded like they were coaching her against what she was doing. So then she must be new. He sighed a little as he was once more reminded of his curse. Leona had been the first to tell him he had a kind face. All he knew was that for some reason strangers always liked to approach him and tell him about their lives unprompted. He was glad he wasn't hideous or repulsive, but having a kind face was far more of a pain in the ass than it sounded. It was important now, because it likely meant the girl was going to come up to him and tell her some sob story about being broke, and that's why she was here, and bat her lashes at him and ask if he could rescue her, which likely meant parting with all his scrip. Well, now he knew how to proceed. He walked up the sidewalk towards her, and sure enough, she walked towards him as well. The escorts behind her were focused on them, arms crossed as they no doubt heaped silent judgment upon her. Hi. Sure enough, there was that sweet tone he was familiar with. I was wondering. He didn't let her continue, however. Instead, he reached forward and gripped her face in one hand, before carefully yet firmly moving her out of his path, before walking on by without missing a step. The escorts who had been watching all began to laugh. Ooh, girl told you. Honey, you best learn, one of them called out. He wants nothing to do with you, was added by a guy too busy being sassy to look at Jaeger. Sugar, you made my day showing this upstart what's what. You want a freebie, daddy? Jaeger arched a brow as he was made the offer by a girl half his age wearing what looked like workout clothes. He kept walking, but she matched pace with him, even as the others kept jeering at the redhead. Thanks for the offer, but wrong motion for my ocean, Jaeger countered. Just looking for a friend who likes raves. Know of any good spots? Oh, sure. There's a great joint called the Prism out by Miso Tower. That matched what Hemi had told him, though now he knew it was specifically called the Prism. Want company? She tried once more. Thanks, but no thanks. He nodded and glanced back to see the dejected-looking girl he had turned down. Someone might want to mend her broken heart. It was nothing personal. No, you did the right thing. She's got to learn she needs to join the union. She showed up tonight all prissy, talking down to the rest of us, thinking she's better. I bet your move will send her packing. Good riddance. He wondered how much was the redhead actually being rude to the others, and how much was this girl's cattiness over potential competition. But he left his wondering unvoiced. "Well, you have a good night, Daddy." The girl blew him a kiss and then waved at a few other escorts ahead of him. "Dad here is just passing by." With that, the escorts left him alone, which he didn't mind. He understood why some people enjoyed this sort of thing, but it was never really for him. As he walked, he got a better look at the cop in the power stilts who was watching him in turn. The cop looked to be around his age, slightly gray around the temples but still in good shape. As they locked eyes, Yeager knew he was looking at someone well experienced in the way of the world. Yeager nodded first as a sign of respect, and the cop nodded back. Then Yeager focused on his path, weaving around the people lining the streets. A few cars would slowly roll by, stopping near someone they liked. All in all, it wasn't as chaotic as he had expected, though he still wasn't sure why it had been set up like this. He couldn't imagine how much more dangerous it would be without dedicated protection, or doctors for other issues. Then again, Hemi had mentioned that Sergeant ran protection. How far did that go? Was he essentially their pimp? At least none of the escorts he passed looked bruised or cut up. Aside from the Divari, but they didn't count. Creepy masochists. As if she could hear his thoughts, one of the Xenos looked his way, giving him a slow, creepy smile that made the ritual scars across her face slowly spread, until it looked like 4 sets of eyes and 3 gaping maws were looking at him. He couldn't help but shiver for a moment at the sight. She laughed at his discomfort, but he just kept walking by. The pilgrims of Swagan, devout followers of death and pleasure, a combination he would never trust. The Tinder Alley, as they called it, was far more a proper street, and he wasn't sure how it had gotten the name. But after another 2 blocks, he got past the edge of escorts looking for clients, and even the edge of the tree canopy. That must be why they stopped at this point. Now he was getting into the new construction on this side of the river. As he got out from under the tree cover, he could see the Miso Tower, which was easy to spot because the tower in question looked to be a large luxury tower with a miso restaurant on top. There did seem to be nicer apartments around here than the ones he had passed, but the tallest was probably only 6 stories aside from the tower. A far cry from the proper skyscrapers of Columbia, or even Soultown's center city where Ham and Raven would be staying. Now that he'd passed by homeless junkies, limbless vets, and a street of companions, he was extra glad at his decision to keep Raven across the river. The further he got from Tinder Alley and the closer to Miso Tower, the nicer the cars started to look. When he spotted a coffee shop that was still open, looked busy, and offered double mocha espresso shakes, he knew he was in the right neighborhood. Now, he just needed to find the right warehouse. Without the trees to cover the streets, he could see more of the skyline, so he tried to pick out the bigger-looking buildings. Then he remembered to look around for prisms. When he saw a big mural down an alley of a bright light being directed into a prism and a rainbow coming out the other end. Following down the alley, he spotted the warehouse in question. There was even a line off to one side with a little red rope blocked off by a bouncer and everything. Ignoring the main entrance, Yeager began to walk off down the side. He was looking for a particular sort of door, and after checking the far side, he found it. Set down a short staircase was a door that looked innocuous enough, but there was a small rectangle set into the center at around eye height. Walking down the steps, he pounded hard on the door with his fist, waited 2 seconds and then pounded on it again. Finally, the small slit opened up and he saw someone looking back at him. "What's the password?" "Password?" Yeager acted indignant and annoyed. "The fucking password is open the goddamn door before I bust it open and then shove my boot up your ass for the trouble. The fuck you doing making me wait?" The eyes he could see looked confused, and then the slit slammed shut. After a moment, he heard a clang and the door swung open. Before the guy on the other side could do anything else, Yeager pushed through. "Wait, I don't know you." The guy was Yeager's size, but younger. Impossible to know if he was a vet or not. These days, it might be safer to assume anyone who was at least 18 at the start of the war was a vet. "Who said you knew me?" "All I said was you better open the fucking door." He started to walk past as the guy gave him a confused look and started to follow. "Where the fuck are you going?" "Watch the door in case someone else shows up." "Do your job, damn it!" The bouncer gave him a confused look and hesitated but turned back to the door. Something he'd learned long ago, that feigning authority was often as good as actual authority. It was likely why they'd made him sergeant. Once he was past the confused door guard, he walked down a cold, concrete hallway as the thump of heavy bass began to fill the air. He could soon even feel it in his chest. While he didn't know the exact layout of this place, he had a good idea of where to go. They were in the service area, no doubt, since they were partially underground. So he looked for stairs and then followed them up. There would either be a VIP area he could access or some sort of catwalk access further up. Warehouses like this always had catwalks, though he wasn't sure why. When he found a door marked DJ Booth, he opened it up and winced as the full effects of massive speakers hit his unprotected ears. He wished he had his smart plugs, or hell, just regular earplugs would do. He stepped into the booth to see a skinny guy in a black and white skeleton costume looking back at him. The skeleton part was glowing in the dark, and he had a skull mask hiding his face, likely with built-in sound dampening to preserve his hearing. "Who the fuck are you?" It was hard to tell exactly, since the DJ had to yell to be heard over the sound of the music, but Yeager pegged him as young. "I'm looking for a friend," Yeager explained as he stepped closer, trying to lean in close and yell over the music. "Why should I give a fuck?" came the yelled reply. So Yeager waved him closer and stepped right up next to him. "Because I won't hesitate to beat the shit out of you." The DJ started to pull back, but Yeager just grabbed his left arm and twisted it around his back. "Turn off the music," he growled into the DJ's ear then. After flailing around a moment, he hit a button on the DJ table, and the music suddenly stopped. Down in the crowd below, he could see the crowds of people slowly stop jumping around and start looking around in confusion. "Tell them I'm looking for Figs," he instructed the whimpering DJ now. Definitely a kid. He wasn't trying to fight back or anything. Pushing a button on the display before him, the DJ gasped out. "There's a very angry—" Yeager twisted the kid's arm a little hard. "Ah! There's a guy with a beard up here looking for someone named Figs. Is there a Figs here?" "Please, God, let there be a Figs!" Yeager looked down around the crowd for a moment, but didn't have to wait more than a second before he saw a large figure jumping up in the crowd. "Yeager! Yeager!" He let the kid's arm go when he saw Figs down below. At first, Yeager thought he was wearing a glowing rainbow shirt, but then realized that Figs was just wearing a shirt made out of glow sticks, similar in look yet distinctly different. "Yeager! Yeager! I'll be right up!" Duncan's deep voice projected over the club as Yeager watched him leap up onto a stage at the front of the club to find a way back to him. "You're free to resume the music," Yeager told the DJ and left his booth. Let's get back to the music. And if someone could bring me drugs, please do." The DJ whimpered before turning the music back up. Yeager shut the door tight to try and preserve his ears from any further damage as he watched Figs appear at the base of the stairs and rush up towards him. "Yeager, you magnificent bastard!" Figs had his arms opened wide. Yeager opened his arms as well to hug his old friend, but he didn't even get a chance as Figs picked him up into a bone-crushing bear hug. Yeager gasped out as he received some karmic balance for twisting the kid's arm. "So good to see you," Figs exclaimed as he squeezed Yeager a little harder. Yeager could feel his ribs starting to groan a little and his feet were well off the ground. "Figs!" He desperately gasped with what was left of the air in his lungs before Figs finally released him. He dropped to his feet and immediately sucked in a deep breath before shrugging his shoulders and trying to work some life back into them. Sorry. You okay?" Figs laughed even as Yeager tried to make sure nothing was broken. "Nothing sometime in the Tesla chair won't fix." Yeager groaned out and winced as he took a moment to feel his ribs. "Christ, you've got to take it easy on me, Figs." "I forgot my own strength a moment there." Figs gave him a brilliant white smile and then pointed past him up the stairs. "Let's talk in my office. It's quiet up there." "Your office?" Yeager asked in surprise, but Figs was already rushing past him. He grabbed Yeager's hand to pull him up the stairs, and if he didn't immediately follow after Figs was about to yank his arm out of his socket. "I'm an old man, damn it!" Yeager protested to no avail as he was dragged up the stairs about as fast as he could manage. But soon they came to an upper level and Figs pulled him into a well-appointed office with all kinds of art. Jaeger had to assume it was art on the walls. There was an ultra-sleek white hover slab of a desk and several chairs. They were objects vaguely in the shape of chairs, no two alike, and none made of anything he'd assumed to be comfortable material to sit on. "You want a drink?" Figs asked as he waved at the only thing that really seemed normal to Jaeger, a glass shelf with only high-end bottles upon it. "Anything to help numb the pain." Jaeger replied and began to shrug his shoulder. "Sorry." "Just so damn excited!" Figs laughed and went over to fix Jaeger a drink. "Your usual? Hard alcohol and juice?" "My favorite." Jaeger nodded in agreement. Figs poured him a drink and then walked back over to him with a glass filled with something pinkish-orange. A good start. "Suit fruit with binary brandy," he explained. Jaeger took a sniff. It smelled pretty good. He went to take a gulp of it then and immediately was hit by the flavor. See, the sourness of the fruit really brings out the bitterness in the brandy. Jaeger nearly gagged and spit the drink back into the glass. "That is the worst part of both of those things," he exclaimed and stomped over to the bar so he could make himself a proper drink. "First you try to crush me to death and then you try to poison me? Just fucking shoot me already, Figs!" He grabbed a bottle of vodka to pour himself a healthy few fingers and then added in some ginger beer and lime juice for a serviceable Svarog swimmer, though he lacked the lime wedge to make it a proper swimmer. "Aw, grumpy old Sarge, how I've missed you." Figs chuckled behind him. "When did you get into town?" "Right now. I came to find you and Brandy Lynn." He explained and sipped at the much more palatable drink. "You can crash in my guest room tonight, but I'm not sure where she is. I lost touch a few years back," Figs mentioned. "I've got some idea how to find her." Jaeger waved it off. "And I hate to ask you to stop partying early tonight, but I've had a long day. Think we can get to your place and crash?" He really was feeling tired considering how long he'd been up. "Sure, the penthouse isn't far." Jaeger arched a brow as Figs offhandedly mentioned a penthouse. And if this was his office, did it mean he owned the whole building? Jaeger went to take another sip of his drink and then noticed Figs moving some of the art around on the walls. A hidden compartment opened up then to reveal a selection of guns that Figs began to browse. "But it's great you're here because I could really use some help killing someone. I was going to put it off till later, but since you're here now, we might as well get it out of the way." As Jaeger heard that, he tipped his drink up, and instead of taking a small sip, just gulped more and more of it down until it was all gone. He set the glass on the bar and took a slow, steady breath. "God damn it!"